It's Zach Eady with Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Boilers in the Stands. It's great to be back, actually. It's been a long time coming. I am your host, Kraig Bowers Jr., been on a long hiatus with Purdue Boilermaker coverage, but the guys to my right or left, I don't even know which, to my right. It's to my right. Look at, I'm already messing up. To my right are Kraig and Joe, who have not taken the summer off when it comes to Purdue Boilermakers and Big Ten basketball coverage. Well, we're all very excited here for the season to get started. Kraig had a great idea to kind of get a mailbag show going just to try to answer some questions to all you Purdue men's basketball fans out there. We do have a scrimmage coming up here on Saturday that all three of us will be attending. So we'll be able to get our eyes on this team. But Kraig, you've been at practice here recently, so you've actually gotten to see, kind of an exclusive look at this team so far. Before we get into some of the questions that the fans have wanted their questions answered, like kind of give us a little bit of a synopsis. I know you've been breaking it down on Twitter a little bit.
It's a lot of the same with a little bit of the new. I think would be the best way to say it. I don't want to say that anybody coming in brand new is going to just be absolutely season changing for this team, but there's pieces of all three of them. When you think about how close we were last year, right? We just needed a little bit of this or a little bit of that. And I think all three of those guys that we talk about coming in new have a chance to add just that little extra piece that would have been enough maybe to potentially put us over the top. And obviously we'll have to see how they develop, how much playing time they get, all that kind of thing. But Lance Jones, Miles Colvin, Cam Heide, all three have pieces of their game that Matt Painter has spoken about us missing last year. And I do need to go on record here, Greg. The mailbag idea was actually Joe's idea. So I didn't want to steal any of Joe's credit. I didn't want to steal his thunder there in any way, shape, or form.
Well, it's a team.
You're the one that put in all the work, though, for this one.
Yeah. Well, it's a team effort. That's what we're doing around here because, I'm getting Dick Stillwagons all over my ass saying, I wonder if Braggs is putting in work tonight or claiming CHGO. We need to work on his priorities. So, yes, it is a team effort here. I have quit bricklaying full-time to now move to sports media full-time, and I'm very excited for that. But with that comes some sacrifice and responsibility and priority checking, and I've had a lot of work to do with CHGO Sports covering the miserable Chicago Bears along with some other miserable Chicago sports teams. But we always keep the coverage fun, and that's what we do here. And so I got to give Kraig and Joe a lot of credit. They've really picked up the slack on my end, and we're not stopping our coverage this year. We got a lot of big plans here coming for the rest of the season. Just for you that are tuning in now, you're going to get the breaking news that Matt Painter will be joining us Monday morning. So when I say we're not slowing down the coverage, I mean it. The head coach of the Purdue Boilermakers will be joining us Monday morning. And so you'll see coverage Saturday with the scrimmage, Matt Painter Monday. We're going to have a lot of different things to get you ready for the basketball season. And then once the season starts, you know how we do here, post-game shows immediately following the game. And then, of course, weekly interviews with some of your favorite players, past and present. That's what we do here at Boilers in the Stand. So stay tuned for other announcements as we go along. So, Joe, like I said, we threw it to Kraig here as far as what his outlook quickly before we get into some of these questions that'll obviously cover a lot of the topics that, I kind of wanted to hear from you guys first, but going into everything, what are your biggest questions heading into the season?
I mean, we'll hit on it. I think the biggest one, the most simple answer is just 3-point shooting. I think, I fully believe if this was a average 3-point shooting team last year, we're probably talking about how do they repeat or how do they go back to back in the Final Four. I think it's a very simple thing. They didn't shoot well. It will alleviate pressure off Edey if it happens. There's guys, as Kraig kind of mentioned, that can bring some athleticism, and that too, that's going to be big. The shooting is going to be the big one, and then just kind of how these new pieces fit, right? There's, it's a good problem, but there's a plethora of talent. It seems like it just kind of your 3 and 4 of guys that or at least guys that potentially could fill that spot. Rotation is probably going to get to 9 at some point. There's 12 guys that realistically or 11 guys that realistically will play minutes. So that'll be my other thing, is just kind of what happens with the rotation.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely going to be interesting. I think for me, the elephant in the room is obviously how they keep, finishing these seasons, and what's the answer to that? And it's an impossible answer or question to answer, really, just because I think a lot of it's happenstance. But to me, more so than the X's and O's and everything else, in a lot of ways, and I am a Chicago Cubs fan, it's almost like this curse that this team has at time, that it feels like they have like a curse, this cloud hanging over their head. And, I know every Cubs player that ever played for those teams felt that pressure and the fans, nervousness heading into those moments. And that's kind of what I'm curious about, is how they can shake those nerves. How can they put that stuff to the side, let their talent speak? They have one of, if not the most talented roster in all of college basketball. They have the most talented college player in all of college basketball. So to me, it has nothing to do with the talent. That I love Matt Painter. I think he's one of the best coaches in the country. I don't think it's a coaching issue. I think it just has to do with handling the pressure and seizing the moment. And instead of tightening up in those moments, play loose, play aggressive, play confident, and how they can get to that, how they can unlock that in the most crucial moments in March are going to be what defines this team at the end of the day. So we're going to get into the mailbag questions that, Kraig put a feeler out there for. We're excited to kind of cover all those. As I'm pulling it up, Kraig, I'm excited to kind of get into this because, we had a lot of really good responses, and, and that's great. It just shows the excitement for the number 3 team in the country. I mean, you guys would probably know better than me, but the last time they were ranked this high going into a season probably was the Glenn Robinson days, I'd imagine, correct?
Might have been. Yeah, there was a tweet about it, but I'm pretty sure it was actually Etwan, Robbie, and Jawan's last year before Robbie got hurt. I think they were top 3. They might have been 4th, but it was around that same time.
So the hype is real and fans are excited. And to kick things off, Kraig, I'll send this one to you, but Sanborn 04, what is one thing that you will be watching intently to start the year that will make you either more or less confident that this team will improve from last year?
Well, I mean, actually, Joe kind of hit on this when you just kind of threw him the overlook of the season type of question. But I mean, I think number one, it has to be 3-point shooting, because the way this team has operated most years, except for that one year we had Carson and Klein, and we were just bombing threes from everywhere all the time without a big inside presence. The way this team is primarily operated is inside out. We're either scoring off the post or we're scoring from three. And last year, 2 months of the season, we did that at a really high level. And 2 other months, we did not do that at a very high level at all. And you can chart it. There was a couple of months where we shot 40% or close to 40%. And then there was a couple of months we shot low 30s. And that's essentially where our losses came from, was during that time period. So that we were shooting closer to 30%. So I think number one for me is, are we consistently hitting the 3-point shot? With that said, I would just put a little addendum on there. When we bring in Lance Jones, you add Miles Colvin to the team. Do we have ways to score when we're not hitting from three? Because I think there's a chance that with Lance and with Miles has a great jab step, little mid-range pull up. Lance can kind of attack and get to the rim. So if we aren't hitting from three, can a couple of those newer guys find ways to help us score beyond the 3-point shot? That's not scoring from the post. So those would be the 2 big things for me.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when we talked about it earlier, it's not about X's and O's. It's not about the talent. If you go and look at that loss to Fairleigh Dickinson, I guarantee if we asked Matt Painter on Monday, would you do it any different? The answer is probably no. They had wide open shots the entire game. At the end of the day, you just have to knock them down, and they've shown they can. And for whatever reason, that night they didn't. But you're right. When it comes to seeing the difference between their wins and losses, a lot of times it's the difference in how they're shooting the 3-point ball. Do you have anything to add on to that, Joe, before we move on to the next one?
You got it.
Yeah, and you touched on it in your opening remarks. Our next question is to you, Joe. So Matt Bannon from Boiler Diehards, and make sure if you haven't yet, make sure you're subscribed to the Boiler Diehards Facebook group. It's a private group that's vetted out for Purdue sports fans only. And, if you get into the club, that means you're a true Purdue Boiler diehard. And if you start messing around or somebody else in there messes around, Kraig gives you the boot. It's just that simple.
And if you're listening to the show right now, make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, or share us out also.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, definitely subscribe, hit that like, and stay tuned for some announcements. Matt Bannon from Boiler Diehard said, how do we sustain getting ready for everyone's best shot over the course of the season? And how do we balance the focus of performance in March with focusing on what's in front of us in November? And he paraphrased that by saying, I get the one game at a time, but the heavy tilt towards March will definitely be running in the background, I think.
Yeah, it's honestly a great question that we could even ask Painter. In terms of getting ready for everybody's best shot, I do like that Purdue returns a lot of, basically everybody from last year. And for 2-3 months, would we say that they got everybody's best shot for the most part? So in terms of that, I think they kind of have that now. They do have a super tough non-conference, and they'll get everybody's best shot there too. So they'll be balancing that. In terms of November versus March, it's an interesting kind of back and forth in my head. It's like I think with all the Purdue postseason woes, like you want to be ready for that. It's a kind of just random 6 games that you have to be on. Purdue has not been on in those. And so being able to find ways to get there, but you still have to put yourself in that spot, right? Like would you rather be like a 1 seed that maybe didn't tinker as much during the year, or a 3 seed that maybe is a little bit more flexible, right? Like it's just going to be something to balance. Like you're not going to try to lose any games obviously either, but I think I'm just going to be interested to see kind of what Painter does to kind of balance that, whether it be go for the Big Ten title per se and just stick with what he knows, or getting in new guys, getting in new lineups, different things like that. So it's going to be interesting overall. But
yeah.
And then the next one, I think we'll throw to you, Greg. This is from Justin Crone. How does Painter keep this team loose, you think, and have a fun mentality without losing the killer mentality. You kind of hit on it already, but if you just want to maybe dive into that a bit more.
Well, yeah, again, some viewers will get annoyed by this, but it's just constantly something I bring up because I just see the similarities between these guys and the Cubs. And Matt Painter is a season ticket holder with the Chicago Cubs, for those of you that don't know, diehard Cub fan. And Joe Madden, who was the manager of the team that finally slayed the 108-year dragon, the longest championship drought in Chicago in sports history. The way they were able to do that is Joe had, discipline integrated with having fun. So he said things like respect 90. And then, there were other things like, hey, his other slogan was, hey, try not to suck. So he wasn't afraid to say things that were like, that would throw a player off normally. Just get the elephant out of the room, out of the way, and acknowledge it. Don't try to ignore the elephant in the room. Look at it dead in the face and say, we're coming for you, and that's where, like, last year's team, you want to talk about teams that are going to take their best. They've been trained to take every team's best punch for the last 2-3 years. These guys are all returning from last year, with the exception of the freshmen, who aren't going to have nearly the amount of responsibility that last year's freshmen had. So there isn't going to be any amount of not being prepared for these moments, not being prepared to take their best punch. And last year, when Northwestern beat them or IU had their number, it took a hit to their confidence. It felt like that whole last month leading into the Big Ten tournament in March, it almost felt like they started to question themselves a little bit, and everything started to become a struggle, and they just couldn't play loose. You have to respond to when a team punches you. It's always going to be punch, counter punch in sports, and don't take, a loss or a failure as something to look down on. Look at it as something that you can improve upon and attack it, face it, say, this is what we need to get. It's a mentality thing, as I've said 100 times. And when you talk about the killer mentality, that's what it is. Don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of the elephant in the room. Stare it right in the face and say, we're coming to kick the damn door down. That's the kind of mentality these guys got to have. And that's what I love about Zach Edey. He could have, I know NIL is a big element of him returning this year, but he could have left after everything, the embarrassment of losing to Fairleigh Dickinson. He could have left, and he said, no, I'm going to stay. Yes, he's getting paid. Don't get it twisted. I understand that element of it, but he said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to finish what I started. And that right there, to me, already sets the tone going into this year. He's back because the way last year ended was unacceptable, and they all know it. And now they're going to try to right that wrong. And anybody as a Purdue fan, don't be scared of it. Just face it. And one day it's going to happen. That was another Cubs slogan. It's going to happen. And if everybody, just players, coaches, fans, if everybody just kind of flips their mind to it and attacks the moment and stop being scared of past failures and just look forward, I'm telling you, that's something that you can't put on a stat sheet. That's something that's tangible. Confidence is so key in sports. I don't care what sport you're playing. So everybody's just got to have a little confidence, players and coaches, to start.
Well, and I think Painter's even really kind of addressed it similar to the way you just did. One, he said multiple times, we have to sit in it. We have to own it. Like you can't run away from it. It happened. Like there's nothing you can do to deny that it happened. So you have to own it. And then the other thing that he said a lot is, unlike maybe professional sports at times where those guys are there for 5, 6, maybe 10 years, most of these Purdue players weren't around when we lost to Arkansas Little Rock or other teams. Like Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and TKR have only experienced this one time. So they don't have the weight necessarily of all these other losses that happened before. They've only had to sit in it that one time, and he's referenced himself as the common denominator. But I don't know that it maybe hits those freshmen quite as hard as it hits some of the upperclassmen, and maybe they just aren't as quite as bogged down by it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to play a little pissed off. These kids got to play with a chip on their shoulder this year. to kind of bounce back from everything that happened. They're going to have to run those replays of Fairleigh Dickinson a million times in their life. The one way that they can right that wrong and correct that is by going out and slaying the dragon. So let's see them do it. So Kraig, I'm going to line this one up to you. Amalgamation of Grant Valiant. that was a tricky one there. Angry Boiler fan on Twitter and Thomas Bowner also on Twitter. All three of these are from Twitter. How do you see Painter dividing up at the 3 and 4 spots? What do you think will be the biggest factor to who starts and who gets heavy minutes at those 2 spots? Seems like Purdue has 7 guys who could start at those 2 spots.
Yeah, and this was probably our most popular question. We had 5 or 6 different questions that kind of touched on this, but those 3 people really emphasized the 3 spot or the 4 spot and how's time going to get divided up and what's gonna be the deciding factor about how that time gets divided up. So I'm going to answer about the 3 spot, and then I'm going to kick it to Joe for the 4. I mean, primarily just because Joe's taller and I feel like he should know post play better than me. But I think the 3 spot's really interesting because coming into the year, we were all thinking like, how are they going to divide up time between the 4 and the 5, the 4 and the 5? And then we started seeing stuff in the spring practices coming out of that, and then summer, and then the Europe trip. And it's like, oh, the 3 spot is going to be a battle this year in terms of who gets time. And I think the interesting thing to me is, as much as any other spot on the floor this particular year, I think the 3 spot may have as much to do with what is happening at every other position on the floor. And what I mean by that is if Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer are shooting the 3 ball at an extremely high level and providing points, and TKR is playing a bunch of minutes besides Zach Edey, and they're giving you 35 points a game, you're not so worried about producing offense from that 3 spot. You're worried about protecting Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith defensively. And if that's the case, that lends itself to Ethan Morton as being a really experienced person. Painter talks a lot about trust. And what he means by that is, can I trust you to be in the correct spot on defense all the time? Can I trust you to make the right read and the right pass on offense all the time? I got a fly landing on me all the time. And Ethan Morton is probably the person he has the most trust in terms of an experience standpoint. Now, if you say, well, you know, Brian Waddell's shown a lot of flashpoints this spring, this summer, and in Europe, he's maybe a little bit of combination of that. He's been around the program for 3 years. He's got some 2 years. He's got some offensive skills. Well, going into his 3rd year, right? Right, Joe? Yep. Going into his 3rd year. Has some probably more offensive weaponry than what Morton does. He's got the length to play pretty good defense from that spot, and he's got some experience there. On the other hand, if we're saying Painter's talked a lot this year about, hey, I should have recognized at some point that we just needed more offensive output. That's his big push behind TKR having more minutes this year that he's referenced multiple times. At some point, you know, if I put my best offensive players out there, maybe we just outscore FDU and don't worry about that, what our defense looks like, you know? So if that's the case, if we're not getting enough offensive output, then you start thinking, well, you know, Miles Colvin can play the 3, and Miles Colvin's probably got the prettiest shot of anybody on this team. He's got a heck of a jab step, 15, 18-foot pull-up. Probably provides more offensive punch, somewhat in a way like Carson freshman year of like, can I just get a heater off the bench to give me an offensive punch? So I think a lot of the 3 spot is going to play out by what is happening everywhere else. If we need offensive punch, I see that leaning more towards Colvin or Waddell minutes. If we don't, and we're getting the offensive punch from everywhere else, I see that leaning more towards Morton minutes, staying kind of more similar to what they are. And Cam's kind of a wild card. He's a leaper. He's a rim runner. He can play defense. He did all the dirty work on that Europe trip, but I just don't. There's a piece. I love Cam's game, and I talked him up really high all spring. Don't forget him. Don't forget him. But this spot is so loaded with talent. I'm worried he's going to be the guy as the rotation gets kind of narrowed down towards the end of the year that may just because of a multitude of things may start to lose minutes in that spot.
So before Joe heads over to the 4 spot, I hate IU kind of is jumping in here, but I just want to get his question in. He said, with so much depth, I worry that we will try and play everyone a little bit. Do you think we need to stick with a small roster so a few people can get comfortable?
Well, Painter's narrowed that roster up as we get into January every year. So I think November and December, he's going to try all 4 of those guys at different times. And I think he's going to figure out who's working and see what those guys can provide at different times.
I mean, don't you think that that'll be more so in the first 2 weeks? I mean, their schedule is loaded here.
But
tinkering with lineups against some of the gauntlet like they have in Maui.
I still think he's going to try. It was January before we really saw Weldell not getting any minutes last year. In those really good games, I think obviously we may not see it quite as much, and he may lean on what he's more comfortable with. But there's still a decent amount of games in there against what should, quote, be lesser opponents that I think he's going to be able to try to figure some things out.
All right, take it away, Joe. Head on over to the 4.
Yeah, so I've started to switch my thinking about the 4. I will start, I guess, by saying just like TKR seems like the dude. Like it's just that's what all the signs are pointing to. If he's not starting at the 4, he's going to take minutes there. But I switched my thinking from like, okay, who plays the 4 to how do these front court pairings work? You're going to get 30 minutes of Edey. We know that. All 3 other big options, TKR, First, Gillis, can play alongside Edey. Like that's going to happen. And so it's less of like who plays the 4 and just who plays the best alongside Edey, if that makes sense. Because then when Edey's off the floor for about the 10 minutes, we'll say a game roughly. Like when TKR and First are in, I don't really care who's the 4, quote unquote. Like they showed it in the offseason, the summer tour. I think First, like defensively, is the 5, but I think TKR is going to be more of the 5 offensively. Like TKR is going to be the one that gets the post touches. He's going to get stuff run through him. First is going to now be able to be this. I mean, he kind of was it last year, just in a limited sample. Like he's super athletic. He can be this guy that can cut to the rim, hoping that the 3-point shot comes back. Like if he can be a guy that is at least respectable from 3 and then can also cut and get to the rim, rebounds really well. I think that's going to be interesting. I think in terms of like pure minutes, and I think we'll have more of a minutes breakdown in one of the later questions. Like Gillis, just as I keep thinking through it, like Gillis is the one that sort of gets squeezed for me, just because he's the only one that can, like, he only plays the 4. He's the only one that, like, aside from Edey, I guess, but out of TKR, First, Gillis is the only one that can only play the 4. And even then, like, I don't think you really want a Gillis First backcourt, just with the way that Purdue runs offense in that. If that happens, then that means there's something positive at the guard spots because you're trusting him that much. So it just kind of takes more of his chances away. Now he has to play with only Edey and TKR. So that's kind of my thoughts, is just like what front court pairings work together. It seems like Edey, TKR is going to get the first crack at it. And then that's going to be fun for when it kind of gets staggered. Maybe Gillis comes in early for TKR, and now TKR comes in for Edey or something like that. And now First is in with TKR. I'm excited for that pairing a lot, but that's kind of just my overall thoughts on it. It's just like, I think it's even just in the Big Ten in general, IU, Michigan are the 2 teams that come to mind. Like there's talk of, okay, there's all these 4s and stuff. It's like, yes, It's not as much in my mind now of can they play the 3 or the 4? It's can they just fit together?
Yeah, and then we have a question here from David Heed in the chat. He said, Heidi, does he get playing time? Someone online keeps saying Cam will play. I know I said Heidi.
No, you said David Heed.
I know Heidi. I'm seriously like
you were reading them both and trying to like
mesh. Yeah. My brain is mush right now. So do you think Cam will get playing time at the 4, Joe?
I don't think he gets it this year. That has been one of my off-season things though, is I think he can play the 4 in his career. Wouldn't even be shocked. If Waddell bulks up a little bit, he could get there. But no, I think just with how they're squeezed, like I think Gillis is going to get squeezed for minutes, and like I think he's like a good player. It's just there's just not enough minutes to go around in that front court. But I think in his career, as it opens up maybe a little bit, he does get it. He does get some time there, just because I think he's a bigger body and like can be this athletic 4. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. And to piggyback on that, Joe, Steve Wood from Boiler Diehards, big supporter of what we do and what Kraig does. Interested to see how the idea of filling the 4 spot with a bunch of TKR minutes alongside Edey will work defensively. Will Purdue defensive mobility get too bogged down with these big bodies making up 2/5 of the defense? Was he specifically asked to bulk up last year since he played a lot of those minutes as a backup 5, or will adding better defense athleticism, help to mask any defensive liabilities that are introduced with the increased Edey TKR minutes?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and it's probably the biggest one is what does happen defensively with this duo. I can't emphasize limited sample enough. In a very limited sample, 57 minutes during conference play when TKR and Edey shared the floor together, 98.8 defensive rating, which is in the 84th percentile. They were absolutely dominant on the glass. They were in the 100th for defensive rebounding percentage, 99th percentile for offensive rebounding percentage. So in terms of like teams are going to get, when Edey and TKR are in, teams are only going to get one chance, and that's just how it's going to work. I think it's going to be interesting to see what TKR does. You mentioned like the slimming down in that. It seems like he probably did that some. The emphasis has been him to become quicker, to become a 4. And so I think in the Big Ten specifically, like I'm trying to kind of think through, like there isn't a ton, I feel like, of lightning quick 4s that it'll be like super matchup problems. I go back and forth because it is not the quick. It's obviously not a quick front court pairing, but it's also a ton of size. So like Purdue's a team that forces a lot of jumpers, and they're probably going to do that again. They're going to have, Edey's an elite rim protector, hoping TKR can take a jump there with that as well. Like, it's going to be tough, but they showed promise in limited sample last year, and I think there is legitimate value in that.
Yeah, for sure. So, it's going to be interesting to see how everything shakes out. There's no question they have a lot of different options, and that's a good problem to have if you're Matt Painter.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, so I think that covers that aspect of it.
Yeah, Greg, I'll throw this one to you. It's just talking about, do any of the freshmen get some valuable playing time? And that is from Frederick Posh on Twitter. So the freshmen, obviously, Colvin is there, and then there's also Wilberg and Heidi.
I think it's Heidi. Cam Heidi. I'm pretty sure.
So do you think any of them get significant minutes this year?
Freshman, I mean, I'm really hoping Colvin. If he's got the best shot on the team, and he's got that kind of athleticism. I mean, we're counting Cam as a freshman too, right? Even at red shirt freshman. Well, yeah, of course, but I'm just making sure that we're counting him in this part of the discussion. I think both those guys will get a lot of playing time. Cam understands the team, and you've seen redshirt freshmen have success, all the way down the line. Sasha, Brandon Newman, TKR, Gillis. This is when you get in the redshirt program here at Purdue, it pays off for you. You don't get screwed by it. And that's why some of these top line talents and recruits have agreed to do it, that you wouldn't see at a lot of different schools. So I feel confident that Camden Hyde, I'm going Hyde. You guys are saying Heidi. I'm going Camden Hyde. It's been 6 months since we talked, or at least since I've talked basketball. Yeah. And if you're not playing for the Chicago Bears and ruining my life, it's basically, that's all I have right now. So I'm very excited for basketball season to get started. And this is honestly, it's every year, college sports especially is a getting to know you period for all fans. So I'm excited to get out there for Fan Day here on Saturday and see these guys for myself. I haven't gotten to. I missed the alumni game where they did a practice afterwards, and I was very upset about that. Didn't get to see Sasha beat the brakes off our guy Bobby Riddell. So, but that was an opportunity to see the team if you are a fan. And this Saturday is an opportunity to see the team if you're a fan. And if you're out there, make sure you come out and say hi. But certainly excited to see Cam out there. We saw a little bit of him at the scrimmage last year. And I know Kraig and I were both looking at each other like, oh, okay, this guy's got something. And I'm sure Miles Colvin's going to be a fan favorite fairly quickly with the lineage he has here with his family and then obviously the overwhelming athleticism he has. And I think a lot of people probably now, from what Kraig's reporting, are going to be maybe not surprised is the best word, but at the same time, when they see how sweet his stroke is, I think that's going to send some people off, because all the highlights you ever see of Colvin that fans get excited about are these windmill dunks and athleticism things. But you want to see, when fans see the total package, I think that's when he's really going to vault himself into someone that fans are hyping up, the same way you saw, Brandon Newman early in his career here. We all want to see the next Jaden Ivey, right? That's what fans are looking for, is who that guy is going to be. Colvin's next in line. Obviously, the hype with Catchings is real. That's a year away. But this is the stuff that's unique to what Purdue normally has. So when they see that unique, I think that's going to be what jumps off the page to a lot of Purdue fans. So I'm excited to see those guys.
Yeah. And just to jump in on that, I think Colvin's just too good of an offensive weapon not to see minutes this year. Like you talked about his athleticism and dunking and all of that, but honestly, the greatest thing he can bring to this team that this team didn't have last year is a 15 to 18 foot pull up. And we used to see Dakota do that all the time. Miles has that 1-2 dribble pull up that, if they're running you off the line, he can consistently hit that over and over and over again, just time and time again. And with Cam, it's just a matter to me of, can he separate himself enough from what Morton does on the floor? Because in Europe, which this is really early, but he seemed to get lost a little bit on the offensive end at time, not in terms of not knowing where he was supposed to be, but there wasn't really anything getting to him for scoring plays. And if he's not providing a scoring punch, then maybe Ethan's doing defensively and everything else the same thing he can, but has a little bit more experience at it. So I think it's a matter of whether he can separate himself offensively. But from a jumping standpoint, dude, we have not seen anybody that can rise and float like him since probably Basil Smotherman, I'm going to say. Going back that far in terms of just a big time gliding dunker. I don't think we've seen anybody like that since him.
Yeah. Well, kind of piggyback off of that with Brian McDowell from Twitter. Will Miles Colvin pick up the defensive strategy, intensity, and offensive complexity quick enough to get playing time early in the season? One of my knocks has been on Colvin. It's just he didn't have to play defense in high school. I have not had to see him be in a system where he was forced to. That doesn't mean he can't. That doesn't mean he won't. It just means it hasn't really happened yet. He was kind of being able to play a free safety at times, and it worked out because he was able just to hunt for steals in that. I truly think getting him in an actual defensive system is going to be big, and I think should be beneficial for him, and especially when you have Edie down low, kind of protect the rim first, whatever. So I think he'll get there. I'm still very much last year was an outlier in Smith and Lawyer of we shouldn't automatically now expect freshmen to come in and start and play 30 minutes a game. Once again, does not mean Colvin can't. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I don't think we should expect it, especially with how many players there are on this roster. It's going to be a competition. He's going to get his minutes for sure because he's too talented not to. But he'll get some early in the season, and then it really is just going to depend on how quickly he picks stuff up to see whether he sticks in the rotation a ton later in the season or not.
And I liken it a lot to Carson coming into that team, because Carson came into a really, really talented team, and Carson was atrocious defensively. But he provided such a big scoring punch that Carson still got 20 minutes a game his freshman year, right? So to me, it's a little bit similar to that package. Is if we have enough defense out on the floor, is that offensive punch needed enough that he gets 15 to 20 minutes a game? I don't think it's 20. I'm just going to throw that out there. We're going to get to that later, but I don't think it's 20.
Okay, moving on to the next one. Frederick Pausch asks, how often do you see Trey Kaufman-Renn and the Big Maple together on the court? Kraig, I'm directing that at you.
So I think this is really interesting, and I was big on the TKR is going to start train for a long, long time because Painters talked about needing more offensive punch. Everything is pointed, the Europe trip, everything is pointed to TKR breaking out as a star this year. And I think there's a pretty decent chance that he ends up being second or third team All Big Ten next to Edey. Even though we have the most dominant post player in the entire country, I think TKR is going to be that good. But
I was waiting for the but. It just the way your inflection of your voice, you could feel the but coming.
The more I think about it, the more I think when Edey's off the floor, TKR's importance to the team from providing offensive punch is going to be so important that I would not be shocked if TKR doesn't start. But when we hit that first time out, he comes in, him and Edey play time together. Then Edey gets his sub out, TKR stays in, and we keep running in that rotation. So I think we will have heavy TKR Edey minutes. I'm just wondering if TKR doesn't still come off the bench and has more minutes than either Gillis or First, like gets up to 20 minutes plus a game, but doesn't start. Like that's where my brain's leading right now. But I think I'm projecting, we'll get there in a little bit, but I'm projecting TKR around 20 minutes or more a game. And I think he will play the 10 minutes that Edey's off the floor. I think TKR will always be on the floor when Edey's off the floor. So there's my 10 that they play where TKR plays alone without him. So I'm guessing they play about 10 minutes a game together. Personally.
Well, and what's the number one thing I kept harping about last year with TKR is that I wanted to see more of him shoot the three ball. I know he's capable. And
he
if
did
you're
it in Europe, and he did it confidently.
Well, and he needs to, because if you're going to put him with Edey, in my opinion, and Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but he's got to be able to still stretch the court. Yeah, he's got that post-up game. He's got the footwork. He's got the ability to chicken wing and leverage and get himself under the hoop. But when you've got Zach Edey and all that gravity that Joe always talks about every year with his breakdowns, and all that gravity is getting sucked towards Zach Edey, you're bringing that. If you're TKR, that gravity's coming towards you if you're in the paint with him, and you're bringing more gravity to Zach Edey. You're giving someone an opportunity that's guarding you to kind of, shade towards Zach a little bit, in case they want to collapse on him. So if you're going to have TKR with Zach Edey out there, at times I feel like TKR's got to pop into the corner and do different things. They're running Chicago action, be that guy at the top that's getting the handoff and either dropping it down to Zach or popping back for the three. There's got to be more versatility this year from TKR and showing more from his arsenal than just being a post-up player.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Like, there's going to be the post-ups. There's going to be high-low actions where TKR gets his post-ups, or pick and rolls where Edey's setting the screen, TKR is posting strong side, whatever. He's going to have to shoot the ball at some point too. You can say that about every other four, or all the two other guys, I guess, that'll be able to play the four. First didn't shoot it well last year. Gillis shot it fine. Had one game that really boosted his percentage too. Obviously, we know Gillis can get super hot from three. So 100%. He's going to have to be able to shoot the ball. He knows that. I think everything points to this offseason he was like, I'm becoming a four. He's got to be able to shoot the ball. Similar question we'll kind of move on to. This is from Aaron CD18. And Greg, this one's for you. And you have to nail it. You can't be wrong on this. All right. Who do you think the starting five will be? He was thinking Smith, Lawyer, Heidi, TKR, and Edey. And yes, whatever you say, we will make sure to double check when the first game happens.
Yeah. We're going to put it in a graphic and tweet it out tonight.
Yeah. To me, Cam's got to show that he can play defense in this lineup, right? That's what's going to keep him on the floor. And if not, because you guys are talking about with Edey and TKR having some limitations defensively, depending on the matchup and depending who the four is, and Smith and Lawyer, Smith's a grinder, Lawyer's always going to, have struggles depending on who he's matched up against with. To me, as much as people are always looking for the Ethan Morton replacement, he's just so vital in his role as a guy that can guard so many different types of players, specifically the ones that really kick our ass at times, and the guy that's just going off, you can put glue guy, Ethan Morton on him and he's going to lock him up for the most part. And so we'll just have to wait and see. I also think, Ethan Morton, I mean, what's he now? Is he a senior?
He's a senior.
He's a
Yep.
senior, and has his offensive output been what we hoped, being the first top 50 out-of-state recruit in Purdue men's basketball history? No. But I mean, when he's a senior, play like it. And he missed a lot of shots that he's fully capable of knocking down. So, if he can find a little more consistency with that wide open shot that he constantly gets, and, we all understand his defensive prowess, I think he's going to be getting more of those minutes than Cam at this point.
Joe, who's your top 5 or starting 5?
Smith, Lawyer, TKR, Edey, and I think to start the year it's Morton.
Yeah.
I'm with you. By the end of the year, it might not be Morton, and Morton might not close games to start the year, but I think he gets the starts.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Smith, Lawyer, Edey, those 3 spots are locked, personally.
Yeah.
And then I think it becomes a question of, I don't think it's a question of if TKR is one of the best 5 players on the team. I think it's just a matter of how Painter wants to use that rotation between him and Edey as to whether he starts. And I'm with you. I think to start the year, he sticks to what he knows he can trust. He talks about that trust all the time. I think he trusts Morton. And I think he starts, but I'm with you. By January, I wouldn't be surprised if that's Waddell. I wouldn't be surprised if that's Colvin. I think a lot of different things could happen at the 3. And if we're really going to throw a wrench into it, some of the big outlets that went in and talked to Painter came out mentioning a potential Lance Jones, Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith starting lineup, which I don't see. But I'm saying some bigger outlets kind of put that out there. So
we'll see.
It'll be exciting. So, sorry, I was getting a little off track here. Let me check these great notes here that Kraig helped put together. So this is, a little combo question for both you and Kraig, Joe, but Boiler Made from Twitter, always love interacting with him. He said, break out your guess on each player's average minutes per game to answer how you expect playing time to be distributed this year. It seems like something's got to give, and somebody is going to play significantly less than they deserve. Steve Wood from Boiler Diehards also adds on with the kind of the same sentiment, with 11 guys, 12, if you count Berg, expected to be capable of being real contributors. Where are the minutes going to come from? I know it's crazy, but is there any chance Colvin is encouraged to redshirt with the loaded roster?
So I'll answer that one first. No,
you take that.
He's not redshirt. But go ahead, Joe.
I was just gonna say, me and Kraig, we, on our notes, filled out what our allotted minutes were. They were pretty similar. I was going through, and I wasn't trying to copy you, but I was like, man, we're putting down a lot of the same numbers. So
yeah, I had those same numbers too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, great. Obviously.
Obviously.
I did the math on my drive home from Chicago.
So, okay. I'm just going to read off the ones we have the same, and then we can talk back and forth a little bit about the slight differences, I guess. So
you got that graphic to throw up?
Yeah, I think so. Let me take a look here.
It's not. It's for a different question.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So we both have Edey about 30 minutes. I think we both expect him to play just a couple minutes less. We both have TKR at 20, First and Gillis at 15. So our front court is pretty locked. Edey 30, TKR 20, and then the other two 15. We both have Smith at 30 minutes a game. He would be basically what he played last year. Let's see. What else is the same? Oh, and then we both have Lance Jones at 15, which I assume is 10 minutes at the backup 1 and then 5 minutes at the 2. Now the differences are pretty slight. I have Lawyer at 27. You have him at 25. I have Ethan Morton at 17. You have him at 15. I have Waddell at 13. You have him at 15. So you have Morton, Waddell staying the same. I have Morton a little bit more. Maybe by the end of the year, that is, more just the same or whatever. I have Heidi at 8. You have him at 5. And then I have Colvin's at 10. And you have him at 15. Kind of looking through this, if I was to make one change, it would be probably take away 2 from Heidi and put him to Colvin. But yeah, like we're on the pretty similar page, I think, overall. I know that it's not the easiest, and I forgot to make the graphics, so that's my bad on that part. But I think like it's for me, Colvin's the one where it's like I think he could. I have him at 10 right now. I already said maybe I'd bump him up a couple more. He's going to have to play the 2. Like, I know that there's all this talk of the 3. I just don't see how he doesn't play the 2 this year in some capacity. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if like 50% of his minutes are at the 2. Just with the way the roster's loaded out. Unless the only way that I think it doesn't is if both Waddell and Heidi like aren't ready and Colvin is. Then I could see him playing more minutes at the most of his minutes at the 3 and just a little bit at the 2. But like yeah.
I mean, that's where your guys' discrepancies are most drastic. I mean, you have Camden Hyde. I'm sticking with Hyde. Camden Hyde at 10 minutes, and Kraig, you've only got him at 5. Do you want to? I'll go through these, but do you want to touch on that? Kraig?
He's got Cam at 8, and I've got him at 5. And well, first of all, let's just say we have no friggin' idea.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like Cam could look like absolute gangbusters in the last 3 weeks since I went to a practice, and he might get 20 minutes a game. Mm-hmm. Colvin might be catching on to defense super fast, and all of a sudden Painter's deciding to start before the season. Like, we don't know. These are complete guesses. But I guess to your point, Joe, you're saying Braden Smith's going to play 30, which is likely. Lance Jones is going to back up those 10 minutes, right? We said Jones is going to get 15 minutes. So you give him 5 minutes at the 2 spot. We both picked Lawyer between 27, 25 minutes, which was pretty close to last year at the 2. So that leaves 13 to 15 minutes there. Jones is going to take 5 of those. The rest of those to me go to Colvin. To me, Colvin's also going to get 5 to 7 minutes at the 3, and that gets Colvin to his 15 minutes. So that's kind of where I sit at on that personally. And it's somebody at the 3 is going to lose out. So somebody's going to show 5 to 8 minutes a game. But the January, February, March is probably only going to play a couple minutes a game, right? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's got to be one of those guys. And I was rooting for Cam and pushing how good I think he's going to be as hard as anybody this spring. And I still think he is. I just right now with all that battle right there, that's where I'm guessing the minutes probably start to get diminished a little bit this year.
Yeah. And real quick before, you got it. If you're continuing.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, before we move on to the next question, like the one other tiny maybe wrinkle that could be thrown in, we saw just a little bit on the Euro trip, and it's the Euro trip, so you take it with a grain of salt. We saw just a tiny bit of Waddell at the 2. It'd be interesting. Now you have Waddell at the 2, Heidi or Morton at the 3, and then the rest is the normal. It's a long lineup, especially and then if Jones is at point, like that's a defensive lineup right there. I don't expect that to happen, but that would be the only way that happens to me really is if it's if Waddell and Heidi are both so good that you just have to play them. Or it's like Colvin just needs another year, whereas Waddell shows he's kind of ready. I don't expect that to happen, but it could be. That's interesting.
That's the other part of this list that really jumps out to me is you both are kind of step for step with Brian Waddell getting between you, Kraig, you have him at 15 minutes, and Joe, you have him at 13.
Yeah. He's going to play. I'm telling you.
I mean, going from 3.9 minutes last year per game to 15, let's just call it 14 between the two of you. That's a significant jump.
Yeah. Is he 6'7", Joe?
6'8" more. Well, less than 6'8". He's long too. He's so
with somebody that has decent ball skills for that size, with somebody that has a decent amount of lateral quickness for that size, with somebody that shoots. He shot 0% from 3 last year, but anybody that's watched him play in practice or scrimmage knows that he can shoot the ball. So and Painter said multiple times he didn't give him enough time last year to develop. So I think you're going to see him more this year.
Wow.
Last year, it was only 8 3-pointers. Like you said, it went over 8. the form looked different than high school. I know he was coming off the ACL tear in that too. In the Euro trip, it looked a little bit closer to his high school form. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. It is kind of hitchy. But he shot, oh man, I forget the exact. He was in, I'm pretty confident he was in the 40% for high school from three.
All right. Well, certainly excited to see that. I mean, having that kind of length. And again, you know, somebody that really, when you're looking at the roster a few years ago, you're not really banking on anything of what his contributions would be. To add him to this rotation of an already loaded roster certainly just speaks to the depth this team has. Joe, our guy, Morris Bankston, he's another guy on Twitter that I really enjoy interacting with. Big Bulls fan as well. He asks, what new wrinkles, if any, do you expect to see in Zach's game based on his summer of FIBA ball and the NBA Combine?
Yeah, so first, if I know that because there's overlap with like Chicago fans here and stuff, definitely go follow Morris. He does a really good job with some Bulls breakdowns and threads on Twitter. So definitely go give him a follow. But in terms of Edey next year, like I don't know if I am expecting a ton difference or many like big wrinkles per se. For me, it's things like, can he play drop a step or two higher if he needs to? And maybe that works with TKR and First being more confident when he's with them. And now you have this secondary rim protector that Edey can step up if needed. And thinking specifically to the Jalen Hood-Schifino game, where, you know, you're letting him take shots that are tougher shots, but he's just hitting them. Can Edey be able to take a step or two up now, maybe stay in front still a little bit, and then trust kind of the backside defense? In terms of offense, like, what does the passing look like? I thought it didn't take a huge leap last year. Like I was kind of hoping he's going to get, especially everybody's going to watch this FDU film and be like, oh, let's just triple team him. He's going to see double and triple teams. That's just what it is. He's going to have to be able to pass out of it. Guys have to knock down shots too, to go along with that. I'll mention the jumper just for fun. Maybe he takes some jumpers. I don't think it matters really too much. But in terms of that, like I think those are the small, like it's after what he's done, it's not like these big things for me that I'm going to be looking for. It's just small improvements, staying, you know, being able to hold his spot in the post, pass out, and then can he be just 5% more like malleable on defense?
Yeah, and I mean he's not going to shoot 3 threes a game. Like that's
the
not
only way
he
happen. is he's shooting like 45%, and then if he is, shoot him.
The only thing I would add to that is just as little as he played basketball before he got to college, and you see his coordination get better every single year. So the only thing that I would add to that is I expect to see him get a pass from Braden or Fletcher or Lance off pick and roll on the move even more this year than last year. Like I think he's going to be more comfortable catching that ball as he's rolling to the rim off that action, even more so than he was last year. That's just the little caveat I would throw on there.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah, we're having some breaking news here with no surgery for Justin Fields' thumb. Now we'll just find out if he can eventually pass the ball. Because you know what? Craig's learning his lessons with old Aiden O'Connell here. Welcome to the big leagues. So, you know, just everyone calm down with any kind of Bears slander. I'm having a tough go of it this year, and I'm in a sensitive place. But to
this is my question to you, Greg. I'm asking you this question.
All right. Well, just 1 second to jump on with Jeff Parks to add on. No, you're fine. With Zach. Jeff Parks is saying Zach Edey did an interview with Andy Katz a few weeks ago, and he said he will be stepping out and shooting his jumper this year. I think Zach and TK are going to out there. I don't know how to describe what he misspelled here. At least 20 minutes a game to put their, I don't know. Somebody help me out at the end. But
to get out there together,
get out there, to be out there together 20 minutes a game. So it'll be interesting to see how much shooting is involved with Zach Edey. It doesn't, as much as that is an ability of his, like you guys said, a few times a game, maybe. But when you talk about the percentage he has around the rim to then lower that percentage further from the rim, doesn't really make a lot of sense analytically. So, but we
I will also
shall
quickly
see.
add, didn't Trace Jackson Davis say that every offseason? And I love Trace.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
He did say that every offseason.
If he averages more than 2-3 attempts a game, I'll take everybody listening to East End Grill at the end.
Yeah,
of
but the difference between Trace and Zach is that Trace couldn't do what Zach did at the combine and shoot jump or before or maybe that was before March Madness where he sunk like 14 in a row from deep or whatever Zach did. So all due
we
respect.
don't know that. There could have been some video
Can I
out there where
slander Trace Jackson Davis in peace, please? All right,
he's looked good in preseason in the NBA.
Perfect.
All right, go ahead. My IU slander's done.
So this is for you, Greg. Big picture thing. Do you think it would be beneficial for Edey to actually have a worse stat line this year, meaning that other people step up and we don't rely on him quite so much?
Yeah, I mean, as long as the one stat that isn't worse is his percentage, if attempts is lower and minutes is lower, but they still are winning games and still a top 5 team in the country and still win a Big Ten championship. We'll take all that. Just the number one stat that needs to stay the same is percentage. What's his shooting percentage? How many wins are they having? Those are the two that can't go down. And then anything other than that does show that the rest of the team is starting to pick up the slack and help carry the load for Zach because he had to do a lot on his own. So, we'll just have to wait and see. But it's so easy to just lean so heavily, especially in those crucial games like against Michigan State last year at home. And when Zach's going, to not throw him the ball, that's where it gets weird because when he's rolling and dominating a game, you want to feed the post. That's what Joe's podcast is called, Feed the Post. But, at the same time, getting others involved is just going to help have you become a more dynamic team and make teams that are scouting ahead to face you even harder to figure out.
Yeah. And I do personally think that Zach's stat line in terms of total points, total rebounds, total minutes probably goes down this year because I think he's going to have more support in place. But like you said, as long as the efficiency, the shooting percentages, everything else is the same. And I still think he averages enough points, rebounds, everything else that he still wins National Player of the Year.
Well, right, because how many?
But I think we're talking a small dip,
Well, because how many offensive rebounds did he have? And if those balls actually go in, that's one less offensive rebound. That's one less putback dunk. You know what I mean? So guys, if guys are making their shots, then yeah, some of these stats will go down for a good reason.
Yep, for sure.
5.5 offensive rebounds.
5.5 offensive rebounds. All right, moving on to the next one here as I had some different things pulled up because of my goddamn constant Bears updates going on here. So I'm going to ask you this, Joe, from Boiler in Texas. Another great follow on Twitter, and make sure you subscribe to his YouTube channel. He's a friend of the show and we're a friend of his. What kind of looks would you like to see this men's coaching staff work up to get Colvin good looks to start getting him familiarized with the college level?
So, yeah, I don't think he's a primary creator. I don't think he's somebody right now that's going to really break guys down off the dribble. I think he's more of a straight line drive type dude. And so with that I just want him attacking bent defenses. I want Edey to draw his man in and now it's a kick out and Colvin's attacking a closeout, or it's Smith Edey pick and roll and Smith, throws a weak side to Colvin and now he can either shoot or he can, like I said, attack closeouts. Like I think that's where he's going to be at his best, is when he can kind of be off ball, and I think he can be really good in that situation. Like I said, I don't trust the on ball. Like I don't think he can fully break down guys like that yet. But you get him in this where even he just needs a slight advantage. He's so athletic, moves so well. Like he just needs a slight advantage on the defense, and then it's done. Like he's going to get to the rim, he's going to get to his pull up, whatever it is. So with that too, pin downs, I expect a lot of that. Chicago action, they would run it for Lawyer. I don't see why they wouldn't run it for Colvin at times too. Allow him to kind of curl, get to a pull up, whatever. hoping that the passing's fine out of that too, but that's not really a question for right now. We'll wait and see. But yeah, I think those are a lot of it. Just have him be weak side, like look for these skips, and just things like that. So I'll throw it to Kraig next with, this is from Tippett523 on Twitter. Which new player who didn't play last year will make the most impact, you think, this year?
I think a lot of people expect me to say Colvin here. And I think this question's interesting because even if Colvin plays less minutes than Lance Jones, just because of what he can provide offensively, maybe he is the bigger impact player. But I'm going to go with the safe choice here in Lance Jones for a couple of reasons. One, we greatly missed athleticism last year. Lance Jones is uber athletic. Lance Jones is going to back up any minutes that Braden Smith does not play at point guard. And Lance Jones is an all-conference defensive player. If you listen to interviews when we got him as a transfer of some of the coaches in the conference that he played in before us, many of them said he was good enough defensively that they would expect him to be first-team all-big defense in the Big Ten also. He's a up in your face, in your body, athletic defender. You put that on the floor, which we didn't have with Braden and Fletcher at those two spots last year. And his ability to break people down off the dribble. He's like David Jenkins kind of had an old man game to him, like turn around, fade away 15-footer. He wasn't going to get by you. Lance has some shimmy shake, and he's got some, just dramatic ball handling skills where I think he's going to be able to get by people, be more athletic. So I'm going to stick with Lance there as being the biggest new impact player all around.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So, well, let's get on to the next one. Sorry, I was reading here in the private chat, but yeah, let's get into 3-point shooting here. Over under on 3-point shooting. Our guy 3Twan Moore, who had some really nice comments about enjoying our show here the other day on Twitter, and we appreciate you, 3Twan Moore. Yeah, over under on 3-point shooting. Joe, Kraig, I'll kind of let you guys take it away. I'll save my math. I don't want to give away my answers before I hear yours. So go ahead.
So I actually thought 3Twan was like pretty dead on his baselines on a lot of these. So I'm going to end up saying the word push a lot of times because I thought 3Twan kind of picked the mark where I thought they'll actually be. But that's exactly what I do with Braden Smith. I think he shoots basically 38%, which he did last year, and then he makes 55 threes or more for the year. Joe?
So you would take the slight over then for the threes made.
No, I'm going to say he hits exactly 55, Joe.
All right, we'll come back. If it happens, then GG. I think he's slightly under. I think, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's going to be because he's implored to take more threes and be more aggressive and pick his spots. So I can see that bumping down to 36, 37%. But with that, I think he makes more than 55. It'd be, I think he could close to 2 a game would be like 60-ish, 60 plus, just depending on how far they go, obviously. So I would take the over there. Next, we can go to Lawyer, or I don't know, Braggs. Do you want us to just go back and forth? Do you want to jump in, or?
No, this is all you guys. Take it away. I'm learning.
He's reading about thumb surgery right now, and if there's any alternative practices that Aaron Rodgers has found out about.
When I gotta sit through math class, they kicked me out of math class a long time ago. Okay, when I was in algebra 2. They said the teacher walked up to the chalkboard and he wrote down some formulas on the chalkboard. This is the first day of school my senior year. It's algebra 2. And he was like, all right, if anybody in here doesn't know these formulas, get out of my classroom. And I went, and I walked right out of that classroom, and I got 2 study halls that semester. So that's what I bring to the table. So, all right, back to
Fletcher Lawyer, Joe. Let's fire through these.
Yeah.
We got to move on.
So
we got a lot of questions left.
3-point percentage at 38% makes it 73. Maybe I'm biased. I don't know. I have the over on both. I think he shoots super well this year.
I called a 38% would be 5% increase from last year. I did think he hit a freshman wall last year and is a much better shooter. I'm going to say he shoots right at 38%, and then I'm saying hard over on the amount of makes that he put up. Mason Gillis, 38% is what he put forward. I think he's slightly under that, and I think he's over on the makes.
I have under for both, and it's just more of fact of playing time in terms of the makes. I just don't think he quite gets the minutes to probably get there. First, 33% and 13 makes. I'm going to go slight under on the 3-point percentage. And yeah, just I hope I'm so wrong, but I'm going to go under on both. I just need to see it more.
I just don't know that that's what's going to be needed from first. I think TKR is going to shoot more threes this year, and Caleb's not going to have to shoot as many. And with shooting less, you don't get in the rhythm. So I'm going to say he's right around there, slightly less, and is with both right around there, slightly less on the makes also. TKR, this is my biggest spread. I think TKR shoots way over 32% personally. So I'm hammering the way over on the percentage and the over on the makes both.
I would be a slight over. I'm hoping that TKR is a 34% 3-point shooter. I'd be happy with that. I do think he makes more than 13 a game. Lance Jones is up next. To anybody that knows, we've already talked about it all off season. Was this dude would fire up threes. Going to be in a different system. We'll see what happens. Over under percentage is 33%. Makes is 30. And I'm confident on the makes is over. I'm less confident in the over for percentage, but I'm going to give it to him slightly, probably like 34% more if I had to pick. So that's what I'd go with there.
And I'm over for sure on the makes. I'm over on the percentage just because when we looked at his statistical breakdown, he's going to get way more catch and shoot attempts instead of off the dribble. Like Painter's not big on necessarily just off the dribble pull up threes. He was way better off catch and shoot. And I think he's going to get a lot more open looks, whereas last year they basically had two high-quality players at Southern Illinois, and he had to take a lot of challenging looks. So I'm going to go over on both. Miles Colvin, 35% and 20 makes. I am going to say here, man, that shot is pretty – I wanted to hammer the over here. But a freshman, they usually either start a little bit slow or they fade a little bit at the end. So I'm going to stick right at the push with 35%, but I'm going to say he's going to attempt way more than that. And he's going to be over on the makes at 20.
Yeah, I'm confident in the over for the makes. I think he's probably closer to 1.3 a game makes. I'm going to take the under. Colvin it's another one. I know we're trying to rapid fire. Once I see it more consistent in college, he could be really good. He wasn't a good shooter in high school. He had to take a lot of tough shots. He was like 30% from three last year. I wouldn't be shocked. He's 34%. Brian Waddell is 35% and 20 makes. I do have the under on both. I don't know what the volume is going to be in terms of shooting for him and even just the minutes. And yeah, that's what I got there.
Yep. I'm exactly with you there. I think he could be more than a 35% shooter or 35% or above if he was taking a lot of them. I just don't think he will take enough to get in a real consistent flow there. Cam Heide, he shot really good when he was over in Europe. And he didn't necessarily have to shoot a bunch of them to shoot the percentage that he shot. So I'm going to say he's going to be right at that 35% mark. I don't think he hits 20 just because I think he gets pushed out on minutes before the year is over.
I kind of like Waddell shooting more than Heide currently, and I took the under on Waddell, so I'm going to take it on Heide as well. And then same thing for the minutes. Just I don't know if he can get there. Last one, Ethan Morton, 30% from three, 18 makes. Give me the over on both. I think he'll be fine. Not like great. I think he'll be passable.
Yeah, I'm going to go over on the percentage. I think that definitely comes up from what he did last year. I actually went under on makes just because I think there's so many other people on this team this year. When you add in Jones, you add in Colvin, you add in some minutes from Waddell, that I think are going to take threes that we're not going to need it in high amounts from Morton, even as high as last year. So I'm still going under there.
All right, there you have it.
And 3-1 made us work, man. 3-1 made us work.
Yeah,
well, I'm kind of offended that you guys don't have Zach Edey on this list. I mean, what is this?
That's Hey, we didn't make the list. 3-1
I'm
made the list. So
offended.
you yell at
3-1. I'm offended. It's the talk of the town. Over under Zach Edey 3-point percentage. I'm setting it at 40. What say you?
Over, probably like 60, 65, probably what,
percent.
Yeah, and then like 4 or 5 makes a game.
Well, I mean, if he shoots 3, what if he shoots what?
3 of 5 is 60%.
Yeah, 3 of 5 on the season.
Hey, there was a year where Biggie shot was our highest 3-point percentage, but he only made like 12 of them on the year. So I could see something like that where
that's what I'm saying. That's why I set it at 40.
Because
it's not high volume.
I could see it where he shot like 40%, but only makes like 8, on the year.
4 of 10 on the year, 40%.
I'm just quickly looking through KenPom, that 22 year, the Jay and Ivy year. Travion went 5 for 14 from 3 at 35.7%, and there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players who shot a better percentage than him, and that just made me a little sad.
All right, we'll move on.
All right, Greg, this is to you from Brandon Bogue on Boiler Diehards.
It's not a math question.
Do you think Painter ever changes his mindset about the press and attacks it aggressively offensively?
I mean, when they push the tempo, it seems like, maybe last year they were too young to push the tempo on the press. And in this year, with this team being a little older, I would hope they would. I think the biggest question is how you use Zach Edey in the press, and to me, that's the key to breaking it down. He needs to flash to the middle of the court, the guy that gets the ball to start. He's an easy guy to throw it into, and Zach's a good enough passer to find the next guy to get it up. If they're boxing Braden in, and when they're trying to get it in, just make it easy on yourself and get it into Zach. And he's just going to tower over everybody and give it up. But, just too often does Purdue run into these problems where, the press is always going to hurt everybody, right? It's not just Purdue. And this has always been a misconception that we've debunked a lot here at Boilers in the Stands. Joe specifically, that this idea that Purdue's the only team that struggles with the press, and also the exaggeration of how much Purdue struggles with the press is something Aiden, who's, coaching basketball now, won't be with us this season, unfortunately, and we certainly will miss his coverage. And Joe have pointed out several times. So, I think the more teams press with us, that's a good thing, because that means that Purdue is winning and that team has to press to try to get back into it. And typically that leads to more free throws for Purdue. So, but should they be more aggressive against it? Sure. If a team's going to try to press all game, I would try to not play into their hands and run right into the teeth of the lion.
I will say, the simplest thing, and you kind of mentioned it with Edey, but it's Painter's going to use it more with Gillis TKR. I think it's just have the 4 take a dribble. There's too many times that Gillis just caught the ball at half court and just stood there,
or threw it back.
Yeah, just take a dribble or two, and then the thing with, I think if we see Purdue attack presses more, it's going to be Braden Smith running very fast, and I think that freaks people out some too. Because now he, I can remember a couple times it worked great, and then he would throw the ball, or he would run fast, throw the ball to Edey, and it was a turnover.
Right.
It goes both ways too, but I think the simplest thing is just have multiple guys that can take a dribble or 2.
If you've listened to Painter this summer, he hasn't really said, now maybe he wouldn't say anything new, right? But he hasn't been we have to change how we attack the press. He's just said, we don't teach guys to go backwards. we teach them in our drills and in our system to move forward and continue to move the ball forward. And guys just weren't confident in doing that too many times. and sitting in on practice, they were basically running drills against press with the same type of look and system that they always have. I think it's just more about those guys getting more confident. With that said, I think Lance Jones is a better secondary ball handler than anybody that we had last year. I think Colvin at the 3, even though I know Joe thinks he doesn't quite have his handle there yet for what you would ideally want it, but I still think he's better in his handle at the 3 than anybody we had last year. So I think we have some opportunities to have some guys on the court that are just more comfortable in their handle against pressure.
Yeah, I hate IU says, will Braden stop sprinting towards the baseline, jumping, and then forcing a pass that isn't there?
Against the press or in the half court?
Yeah, that's the clarification I need to, because I am very much.
Because I hope he still throws some jump passes in the half court, because they're friggin' beautiful when they connect.
My whole thing with it is, like, if you take that away from him, what, like, Purdue is like, hey, Braden, go be aggressive, go make plays. We need you to create.
Right.
Now, if that's taken away from him, like, yes, there's going to be turnovers from it, but whatever. He's going to make good plays from it, and he's going to be aggressive more than anything. And you need that. Like, I hate I don't like that.
Let's make
like,
you Bob
he has
Cousy,
to stop.
Or...
Yeah, like
right?
that.
Like,
it has to be all fun. Like, that's who Braden is. If you take the flair away from Braden, he doesn't start last year. Like, he wouldn't be good enough to start last year. Doesn't say he can't improve and limit the turnovers, but they come with who he is.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine an NBA coach looking at Steve Nash and being like, don't ever make that jump pass? Like, he's an MVP. Like, he was an MVP in the NBA because he was so wildly creative like that. You can't take that away. You can learn and limit and reduce the mistakes, but the creativity of what, I mean, he's listed at 6 foot. I've walked past him in the hallway. Okay. Like, you take the creativity away from a guy that's been undersized his entire life. Like, that completely diminishes who he is. It's awesome what he does when he's in his bag. So, yeah.
All right, let's get on with it. We got a few more questions, and we appreciate everyone that, contributed to this mailbag show. We'll try to do more of these as the season goes along. So this was a great idea by Joe. I credited Kraig earlier, but it was Joe's idea that Kraig tried to steal. But no, Kraig did a good job prepping for the show as well. It's a team effort here at Boilers in the Stands. So I'll ask you this, Kraig. Got a question for basketball recruiting from Puking Chimp on Twitter. That's a visual. Saw a big dog with Sicily and Mullins. Is he going to be coming back in some capacity to help on the recruitment front, or was it just a coincidence he was there? Other schools bring in former players during visits, but haven't seen us do it.
So I'm not positive of this, but Raphael Davis had a large event in West Lafayette that same weekend. The bigger than basketball, like, charity event that he has. And there was a whole bunch of former Purdue players back in town for that event. So my assumption is that Big Dog was, and I think I saw some pictures with him with Zach and some other guys that were also at that event. So my assumption is that Big Dog was back for that event that Raphael put on, and it was more coincidence than anything else. My understanding is Painter does use former players in recruiting, but maybe they just don't put it out there with pictures and all those photo ops and everything else quite as much. With that said, I will say there's been this thing, this kind of rumor for years around Big Dog about, is there an issue between Big Dog and the Purdue basketball program? Because we don't see his face at events. We don't see him showing up to different things. And I had heard it so much, I almost kind of internalized it and just assumed that was true. And as I started covering the team and got a little bit closer to people in the program, kind of what I heard more is just like, Glenn's a pretty private person and doesn't need the spotlight. And he doesn't really care to show his face. So I don't think it's an issue of like Glenn having any sort of problem or issues with Purdue and his experience at Purdue or the current players, coaches, anything else, whatever. I just think he's one of those guys that likes to live a more quiet life and doesn't really care to get out at a bunch of public events personally.
Yeah, it's like me. I just like to live a private life, guys.
Yeah. Now, if Jakari commits, I think we'll see a lot more of Big Dog. But with CJ Cox committing just here recently in essentially the same combo guard spot, I don't know how likely that is.
Yeah, Jeff Parks, Jakari Harris is, Kraig just mentioned that's who you are talking about coming out of high school soon.
But that's not his son, is it?
Yes.
That is his son? Okay. I wasn't sure. Okay. So Joe, well, no, we got a couple more here before we get to rapid fire. So why don't you guys go ahead and take it?
Yeah, this one for Greg, and then Kraig also, I think you kind of have a good grasp of this too, if you want to jump in, but it's from an anonymous. Will Painter have to adapt his coaching and tactics for the world of NIL in the long term?
That's a tough question. I mean, it's already working to their benefit with the way this laid out for Zach Edey, right? Because there's a part of you that can say, where would you think would be the better place to be, when it comes to NIL? Kentucky or Purdue, right? Obviously Kentucky.
Yeah.
Right. But when you talk about national branding, I always try to say, who was the guy that won National Player of the Year before Zach Edey?
Tshiebwe.
Oscar Tshiebwe. And if you saw Oscar Tshiebwe in a Pizza Hut commercial, what's the percentage of the people in America that would know who Oscar Tshiebwe was?
I get where you're going. Yeah.
Right. Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, these guys churn out big time players, and it's not as unique as when a player like Jaden Ivey does what he does at Purdue or what Zach Edey's doing at Purdue. So when you're able to go to a school like that and lift them up for your personal brand, it takes you to another stratosphere. And Painter's starting to get players that have the ability to go to the next level and make a difference as well. Jaden Ivey's doing it right now, and Zach Edey's doing things that this school has never seen. And Kanan Catchings is coming here next year, and he'll probably do things this school has never seen. So to me, I don't know how much Painter is going to have to adjust, because at the end of the day, you can pay all the players you want. There is a bit of an adjustment there, but at the same time, Painter's always been able to find the guys that the schools don't know about. And are those schools going to get lazier about that because all of it's a payday thing now? It was already playing into Matt Painter's hands to find the diamonds in the rough before this. And I think it'll become even easier going forward when you've got, a lot of these schools chasing the big time money players, where Purdue's going to kind of lay in the weeds and find those guys that everyone's looking past. That's like, yeah, he's a basketball player. He's a winning basketball player. And that's what Matt Painter's looking for at this program. Now, when they blow up, to keep them here, that's the next story. Can Purdue create an NIL program that once they've proven themselves here, that they can keep them here? But a lot of times in the way that Matt Painter also recruits, it's not just being winning players, but it's guys that fit their system as far as their personality traits and their work ethic and their mindset and demeanor. And so when they come to Purdue, it's a natural fit. Mason Gillis could have left, right? Mason Gillis could have left here. He decided not to leave, and that's no slight at Brandon Newman. It's a numbers game. Brandon wanted to go somewhere, but he also stayed an extra year last year that he didn't necessarily have to. So I think most guys that get recruited here and play here want to stay here, and they're going to do what they got to do to make sure they get paid right. And if you rise to the level of Zach Edey or Jaden Ivey and you're still here another year, your national branding is going to be more unique than it is at all those other schools that pay all their players, a significant amount of money. That's my take.
And I think there's a couple things in play here, because one, it's been reported Zach made almost $1 million last year and supposedly is making significantly more this year. I don't know. There's no public reporting of this, so we don't know exactly how true any of that is, but it's been reported by multiple sites. So I think we can assume it's probably at least close to those numbers. And there was also a report at some point that there was going to be like a baseline amount that was paid in NIL money that was going to go to every single player on the basketball team, regardless of how much playing time they had or anything else. And that number was fairly significant. So I think Purdue is positioning themselves fine for that. And I'm still a big believer in cities that have NBA teams. Like that's where the focus is. So like bigger cities have other things to worry about, pro teams and this or that, or other things like that. And to me, true college towns that are decent size can leverage the fact that their college players are the stars of that area for NIL. So I think Purdue has a chance to capitalize on some things. We've seen Zach Edey billboards in Indianapolis. You see Mason Gillis on all these different jewelry commercials. I don't know. My daughter tells me, not him. my daughter tells me that Mason Gillis is like a god to college age student women out there. I don't know, but he's in commercials friggin' everywhere. So like people have leveraged that for sure. The other thing is, I don't think we know where any of this shakes out until the COVID year players are gone. Because right now, the last 3 or 4 years, there have just been so many extra players on the market because of the COVID exemption year. So when that finally phases out, I think we'll get a better sense of what the market truly looks like in terms of teams being able to get players.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add. This isn't like my cup of tea per se, but I think, I think that last thing you mentioned is going to be big too. Is like it just kind of has all started. I don't think it really regulates itself. Like the market kind of regulates itself for probably 3 years. This should be, except for probably a few outliers, this current senior class will be the last group of seniors that have that COVID year eligible to them. So in 2, 3, 4 years, now we're getting back into more of the 4 years plus grad transfer era. And I think that's when we'll see things. I think that's when we'll start to see more consistency within everything.
All right. Now we're hitting the rapid fire. Our instructions in this rapid fire from Kraig, who did the pre-production. He said 30 seconds or less. So if you do not follow that instruction, what is the penalty? Maybe I need to know this because I'll probably be the one penalized.
You got to buy me dinner. That's the penalty.
I got to buy you dinner. Okay.
We need what's
I have a whole season's worth of dinners here by the end of this. What's that, Joe?
What's the ESPN show? It's like Around the Horn or whatever, where the dude, it's like 4 people and the dude has he can just
the
mute
buzzer.
people.
Yeah, Tony Reali got the mute button.
We need that.
Oh, my wife had the mute button. She would use that thing judiciously. All right, Joe, where would Purdue be ranked nationally without Zach Edey?
I assume 15 to 20 is where they would be good. Like there's still quality talent. Probably closer to the 20 mark would be my guess, though.
Yeah. I'm going to say 14 because I want to disagree with you. Go ahead.
There you go.
We went long enough. I had to get up and plug my computer in, so I did not expect the show to go this long, and I'm staying under 30 seconds. I'm also going to say 15 to 20. There's enough talent on this team to still be a top 20 team.
I agree. TKR, he'd be first team all Big Ten if not for Zach Edey. So Zach owes TKR a lunch or a dinner. All right.
You got it.
Yeah, no, you go.
From Frederick Posh on Twitter, does Purdue win the Maui tournament?
Yeah, they're going to win the damn. Well, how many non-conference games have they won in a row now?
24.
Yeah, 24.
Yeah, it's going to be too hard to get through that gauntlet. And they have some non-conference games before that tournament. Maybe they need to get that loss out of the way before they hit Maui. I don't know. Did I talk for 30 minutes? Do I owe you guys a dinner already? All right.
No. I'm with you. I think it's going to be really, really tough. You have number 1, number 3, number 5, number 9, number 11, and number 28 all in that tournament. I think it's going to be really, really tough. I am still going to say yes because I think this team has more players that have played together. They're going to mesh better. They have the National Player of the Year. I think they win because it's super early in the year.
Wow.
Yes.
Marquette at 5. Be interesting. That was a great game last year against Marquette.
Joe said yes, so he beat the 30 seconds.
That was quick. He had to make up for my 28 seconds. All right, I'm gonna just start taking this thing over. I'm gonna ask every one of these. All All right. Positive Purdue vibes on Twitter asks, all teams hit a skid at some point in the season. Are we deep enough this year to survive one?
Yes. No, but we are. I think there's the biggest thing, and I mentioned it off the top of the show, is the 3-point shooting. When the shots aren't falling, like there's going to be more options to be able to hit that. There's also more athleticism to be able to try to get to the rim if those shots aren't falling from literally everybody. But I think so. I think it's just a deeper team.
Okay.
And I'm going to say same to Joe.
Yep.
Exactly what Joe said.
All right. Well, then you didn't need to say anything. Lauren Lamb from Twitter. Are you guys going to the Maui Invitational?
Yes, I am. These two schlubs are going to be freezing in low 40-degree, high 30-degree weather, but I will be sitting on a balcony overlooking the beach, coming to you for post-game shows in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Yep, that's going to be a lot of fun for you. I'm excited for you. Unfortunately, no, I will not be in Maui. I'll be covering the 1-9 Chicago Bears at that point, following the tank standings and seeing if we can get another number 1 pick to save our franchise that just is a godforsaken one. Michael Gordon from Boiler Diehards, he's been in the chat here for a lot of this show, and we appreciate Michael's support. Has the national hatred of Purdue ever been this high? Why does such a likable team receive this much negativity from non-Boilermakers? Will a national title silence the non-believers or only fuel their jealousy? A national title would shut everybody up, because at this point, like I've said a million times, they have become the Cubs. They are the Chicago Cubs, and they are a whipping boy. And while there may be some people with a goddamn heart, and when Steve Bartman happens, they don't laugh at us, they feel bad for us. For the most part, people, misery enjoys company. So to me, that's all that is watching Purdue consistently blow it in the tournament is something that a lot of fans, around the country, it almost seems like they enjoy it, but it's just also one of those crazy things. It's like I said, it's just very Cub-like. And the day they slay that dragon, I think will shut people up. You don't hear the same cursed. The Cubs are no longer cursed. They just suck when they're not good, and they're not hated the way they used to be. So no, I know this went over 30 seconds, so I'll owe you a dinner for this one, but this is my wheelhouse. I mean, to me, last year they were a victim of their own success. They were a team that was a year ahead as far as what they could be potentially, as far as, talent and winning the Big Ten, and they get this number 1 seed. And so you look at them like they're Kansas, but their roster was, a lot of freshmen. And so that made it very hard. That was going to make it very hard for them to go on a deep run without having any experience going through the gauntlet like they did last year. And it's unfortunate they weren't able to go a little deeper in the tournament to get that tournament experience, because that is also key. But at the end of the day, they're going to have to push all that to the side and win the whole damn thing anyway. So we'll just have to find out. But yeah, the hatred is high right now, but it'll disappear the day Purdue wins one. And I think most people would just be happy for Purdue and Matt Painter specifically.
I will say the hatred has never been higher for Purdue. As the longest Purdue fan in this group and the oldest mofo on this show, because we are more relevant than we've ever been on the national stage. So we have the attention of the national audience more than we ever had. With that said, I'll say 2 things. One, the national title will silence everybody but IU fans who are just going to say, we've got 5, you've got 1. The reason I think that we aren't as likable, people love to see super athletic play, and we're super fundamental. What Painter preaches, what we do, we have a bunch of super fundamental guys. And the other thing on top of that is people like to be able to relate to the player. And if they look at a guy that's 6'1", Allen Iverson, to 6'4", 6'5", they can somewhat relate to them. And in their head, they think, if I had just worked hard enough, I could play basketball like this guy. When they look at 7'4" Zach Edey, they think that's just unfair. He just has a size advantage. He just has this. It's like looking at Joe Jackson if he was a superstar basketball player and saying, well, we can't just all be that tall. They want to look at somebody that they think, well, we can relate to them because they're somewhat close to our height. And if we just work that hard, we could be that good too. We don't have an unfair advantage.
Both of you went over 30 seconds for sure. I'm going to just quickly go. Maybe I'm on a different
I know
side of
I got
Twitter.
all the shit in the chat for my rant that went over 30. So right now, me and Kraig are both one dinner up. Joe, no dinners.
So I'm going to start my timer now. Like, I might be on a different side of Twitter. I see more love than hate, and maybe I do a good job of just getting that out of my feed because I don't need it. I want the hate, kind of like, don't respect Purdue this year. Like, I don't want opposing teams to, or opposing fans to, like, don't respect them, and then hopefully Purdue proves them wrong.
I mean, the whole Big Ten hates Purdue because they dominate them every year. You know, I mean, Tom Izzo's crying after post game saying Zach Edey's cheating. Illinois doesn't like Purdue anymore because Purdue keeps beating the brakes off them. You know, and now you've got that rivalry potentially with, you know, the freshmen they have coming in, and some of the things his mom has said to certain beat writers here at Purdue. I'm sure that's going to be an interesting dynamic as well. And so to me, you know, that's part of the Big Ten hatred. And then, like Kraig said, the David versus Goliath thing, when the Goliath Zach Edey runs out that tunnel in the first round of a tournament, and you have 4 different fan bases at the game, because that's the tournament atmosphere, is all 4 teams' fan bases are there for both games. Unless you're a Purdue fan, you're going to root against Goliath. Everybody loves the David story, and that's not just for Purdue. Everybody's going to root for the underdog. So Purdue's just got to find a way to, you know, instead of being the hunter, they're now the hunted, and embrace that, like Matt Painter has said. All right, final one. Steve Wood from Boiler Diehards. Kraig, and Joe, you can wrap it up as well, and then we'll put a bow on this thing. Talk in detail about our non-conference schedule and some of the specific opponents, what playing quality opponents means to the team from a development standpoint, and what a successful, quote-unquote, non-conference schedule might look like.
So, Steve, I am not going to answer your question at all, and this is why. We have an entire show that is going to be dedicated to this question. So if I answered this question, Joe and Greg and I would be on here for another hour and a half, and we cannot be. We have a show coming up. Most likely, it's not hammered down yet, but not next week, but the week after, the last week leading into when games start. Our plan is to have a show that week. We are 95% sure we just got to hammer out a time that we have a special guest coming on, Eric Haslam from Haslametrics, to help us look at the schedule, not just from who have we historically played well, who historically might, you know, give us a better look than somebody else, but also looking at it from a data-based analysis way and a metrics way of who our most challenging games should be. If you don't follow Eric Haslam on Twitter, you should. He's an awesome follow. He's, you know, Ken Pom light, I guess, from a national awareness standpoint, but he does the same type of things as Ken Pom. But he's very active on Twitter, and he goes back and forth with Purdue fans all the time. We just got to lock down a time with him, and he's going to come on a show, and we're going to do a very in-depth look at our schedule for the entire year.
There we go.
Yes.
It's going to be exciting. And more math.
I'm super excited about it.
I might have to sit out that, because, like, what good am I in these math? You know, Brian Tonsoni's really great at this stuff too. And as we get deeper into the year, I start to understand, like, what we need to, like, up our metrics. But man, going into the year, this is seriously like walking into Algebra 2 that first day of school and having no idea what the hell you guys are talking about.
I expected more of a reaction out of Joe when I told him Eric Haslam was going to come on this show. Like Joe's a stats guy, and I expected like oh my God.
I was just more confused about the premise of the show. That's where it was. No, I'm super excited to have him on. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'll just sit there. I'll just be like a frozen. Like I could do like
We'll just give you all the questions.
Honestly, I could do like a Ferris Bueller's thing where I just put like a cardboard cutout of me smiling, and you wouldn't know that I wasn't on the show. I could just walk and sit in the living room while you guys handle it, because I would be completely and utterly useless. You
can just ask all the questions that show, Greg.
Yes,
he's a Packers fan, I think, too.
Yeah, he is a Packers fan, so you guys can talk some shit back and forth.
Nobody's perfect, you know. So, well, that wraps things up here for tonight. It was a fun mailbag show, kind of shake the cobwebs before we get into our scrimmage, the open scrimmage coming up here Saturday morning / afternoon at Mackey Arena. We return to Mackey. The last time we were in Mackey, confetti was falling from the sky, and it was a really, really fun time to be a Boilermakers fan. And so we return to Mackey Arena here Saturday. All three of us will be in attendance. So excited to start this journey back over. You know, this is how it ends at Mackey most years, and that's something that should never be taken for granted. But the journey is always more fun than the destination, my friends. So embrace the journey, and that's what we're going to do here at Boilers in the Stands. And we're going to be talking about this all season long. So we just got some fun announcements coming up in the next 2 days. You're going to have some big announcements coming your way. That's the teaser there. This open scrimmage, we're going to have some big time coverage attached to that. Like I said earlier, Matt Painter coming on Monday morning. Stay tuned for more announcements of exactly what time. And, then 9 days away from Purdue versus Arkansas exhibition, potentially Haslametrics popping on the show. And obviously, we always shake down Bobby Riddell to come on whenever we make him come on. He's lucky he didn't come here tonight to hang out with us. So we'll have to get back in touch with him. And, then when the season gets rolling, just stay tuned for those post-game shows immediately following the games. And the weekly interviews and having fun covering this team. It's going to be a fun journey, and hopefully the destination ends into a Final Four and a national championship, but one step at a time, my friends. So do you guys have anything else before I, close this shop down for the night?
Yeah, I have let me get on like an hour-long rant about no, I'm kidding. If you guys are there Saturday, definitely come hang out with us. We'll be there for sure.
If you recognize us, come up and say hi to us. We love that stuff when fans come up or not fans, but when viewers of the show come up and say hi to us, talk to us a little bit. We love that stuff. So
see, Braggs's Bears are what they are, and you guys saying hi will really cheer them up.
Yeah, I'm going through it. I'll tell you that, ladies and gentlemen. But I've inherited the Chicago Blackhawks, so now I'm trying to become a hockey fan, which is a new adjustment for me. So Saturday is going to be a loaded day for me. I'm going to be, doing the Purdue thing in the morning, and then I'm leaving, after practice is over to come back home from West Lafayette and then go back out to Chicago for the Blackhawks home opener. Now that we have Connor Bedard, this, young phenom, the home opener is going to be rocking and rolling. So big Saturday here for Braggs in the Stands, and a big year for Boilers in the Stands.
Connor Bedard.
Oh
yeah, definitely know who that is.
Yeah, you will know who
big
that
hockey
is.
Guy right here.
You know what? You embrace your Cincinnati Reds to my chagrin in the summer. You can find a way to start enjoying a little bit of hockey.
Yeah. And Joe and I are going to be there for the women's part too. At least I am. I'm assuming Joe will be up there for that on Saturday.
Planning on it,
yes, because we did have the pleasure of having Katie Gerald's on the show a couple of weeks ago. Definitely want to do a little bit of stuff around Purdue women's basketball as we see their ascent rising right now. So hope to be there and be able to comment on a little bit of what's coming with their season.
And if you haven't checked that out yet, make sure you go back and give that interview a watch. Joe and Kraig did a great job with the head coach of the Purdue women's basketball team. So that's what we're doing. We got head coach of Purdue women's basketball, head coach of Purdue men's basketball coming up here on Monday. That's the kind of stuff you find here at Boilers in the Stands. Some great exclusive interviews and being with the people. Yeah, we're going to do another watch part or meet and greet at some point this season where we'll get some pizza and have some fun. So just stay tuned for all those announcements. The Bajan era, Dick Stillwagon. The Bajan era starts now. That's right. Tyson Bajan. It would be so Chicago Bears for this dude to ball out. I'm going to give away my pick now, but I'm going to pick them to win on Saturday or on Sunday solely because Chicago, if they know only one thing when it comes to football, it's quarterback controversy. So there will literally be nothing that surprises me if the Bears go out and win a football game on Sunday. And now we have this literally clash of the Chicago Bears fans and who the quarterback of this team is. So let's just have some fun talking Boilers basketball because I need an escape from Chicago football. So, all right, guys, appreciate all the hard work. Thank you for carrying me here tonight. I was completely and utterly useless, but I will continue to try to get better every single day. Starting Saturday, I'm going to watch this team, be locked in. I'm going to put some good content on Twitter, and then maybe my opinions might start making some sense by December about this team. But I appreciate you guys carrying the load here. Great job all summer long getting us to this point. So hit that like button on your way out. That's going to wrap things up for tonight. And we're gonna finish it. Normally we finish it with some kind of normally we finish it with the Zach Edey running out the tunnel, but this time I'm gonna finish it with Purdue and don't laugh at me. This is just we're back to Midwestern goodbyes. I'm gonna finish this goddamn show with the trophy raising that I just showed with the sound because that's some good vibes heading into the season. So have a good night, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy your Thursday night football. Blackhawks on at 9:30. Tune into the CHGO Blackhawks postgame show when it's over. Have a good night. Shameless plug. Midwestern goodbye. Go Boilers. Boiler up. Bear down. Hammer up. Hammer down. You know how it goes. Let's go.
Please welcome